Most exciting destination in all of northern Wisconsin. LCO Casino Lodge and Convention Center, Hayward. LCO.
Hello, I'm Kimberly, and welcome to the NAVE News Update. It's Friday, April 27th. Many of the stories you hear here can be found at IndianCountryNews.com. And here's the news for today from the Associated Press and other Native news sources. An important historical map drawn by a Native American leader for Lewis and Clark was recently discovered at the Bibliothèque Nationale de la France. Historian Clay Jenkinson says this is easily the best preserved of Native American maps drawn for Lewis and Clark, and represents the most important discovery in the Lewis and Clark world since 55 letters by William Clark were discovered in a Louisville attic in the 1980s. Discovered by a University of New Mexico graduate student who was working on a Native American cartography, the map was drawn by an Arikara leader named Tunay, whom Lewis and Clark met in today's North Dakota and South Dakota border on October 8, 1804. The documentary 100 Years, A Woman's Fight for Justice, about Eloise Cobell, who filed and won the largest class action lawsuit ever brought against the federal government, is now available on Netflix and has been airing on PBS. The $3.4 billion settlement is compensating individual account holders for land buyback and for the Cobell Education Scholarship Fund. Cobell said in the 75-minute documentary that the government could lease Indian-owned land out to oil and timber companies, make sweetheart deals, and nobody held them accountable. And the more Indians were dependent, the more control they had.
Every day, Indian people are dying in Indian communities without the money that they need for the basics of life.
Put yourself in our place. 1887, the Allotment Act busts up on tribal land holdings.
What was once an Indian reservation is now divided up into 500 different parcels,
giving each tribal member their own land. We have oil-rich lands, we have gas-rich lands.
The American economy thrives on Indian land. America said, we will manage these lands for you, and we will lease them, and we will give you that check. As long as the grass grows, the water flows, and the wind blows.
The government made a promise it never intended to keep.
I went to Washington to file the largest class action lawsuit in the history of the United States. I'd never sued anybody before in my entire life, let alone the United States of America. I said to myself, if you don't do it, who will?
When you lead a movement that seeks fundamental change, there always has to be an iconic figure that simply refuses to get to the back of the bus. And that is Eloise Cobell.
At the final ruling, Cobell spoke by phone as her health limited travel. She said the case was one of the most difficult challenges she had ever faced, but brings a measure of justice for some of the most vulnerable people in this country. Cobell, who died in the Great Falls in 2011, received a posthumous Presidential Medal of Freedom in 2016. She died just before the first settlement checks were mailed and was buried on her ranch on the Blackfeet Reservation. The National Indian Gaming Association, Ernie Stevens Jr., and the family of the late Charlie Hill honored comedian, stage, television star, and restaurant entrepreneur George Lopez with the Charlie Hill Spirit Award at the Indian Gaming 2018 trade show and convention. The Charlie Hill Spirit Award recognizes the positive impacts an individual has made in the entertainment industry. Lopez's multifaceted career encompasses television, film, stand-up comedy, and late-night television. In 2015, the San Manuel Band of Mission Indians and George Lopez joined forces to create Chingon Kitchen, a restaurant serving up exceptional Mexican cuisine at the San Manuel Casino. The first written treaty between the United States and an Indian nation, the treaty with the Delawares in 1778, will go on display at the Smithsonian's National Museum of the American Indian on May 10th. The original document, on loan from the National Archives and Records Administration, will be on view through September as part of the exhibition Nation to Nation Treaties between the United States and American Indian Nations. The treaty set an important precedent for U.S. Indian diplomacy. Henceforth, the U.S. would deal with Native nations as it did with other sovereign nations through written treaties. Displaying original treaties in the Nation to Nation is made possible by the National Archives. There is a total of over 370 ratified Indian treaties in the archives. The next treaty to go on display at the National Museum of the American Indian will be the Fort Laramie Treaty by the Sioux in 1868 in the fall of 2018. The treaty currently on display is the treaty between the United States government and the Navajos signed at Fort Sumter, New Mexico Territory, June 1st, 1868. Cherokee National Treasures, in their own words, has won the 2018 silver medal in the coffee table book category in the 2018 Independent Publisher Book Awards. Shauna Morton Kane and Pamela Jumper Thurman led the project and served as editors. They were joined by Betty Christie Frog and Gail Parnell Samuels, all of whom took years to compile and chronicle the life stories, artwork, and photographs of nearly 100 Cherokee cultural keepers into one timeless account. To purchase the award-winning Cherokee National Treasures in their own words for your home or coffee table, you can visit CherokeeGiftShop.com. And that's another roundup of news from Indian Country on this edition of the Native News Update. I'd like to thank you for joining me and have a grand day.